Hello, thanks for joining me on Life and Surround. Today I will be reviewing the latest albums by both Metallica and Megadeth. So we're talking about 72 Seasons and The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. I have specifically listened to the streaming Atmos, otherwise known as spatial audio, versions of these albums. Both are streaming in Atmos spatial audio on Apple Music. Atmos is a music format that I absolutely love. It's an immersive music format. It really can drop you into the heart of music that you want to engage with. So I'll be evaluating the effectiveness of both mixes, plus the music contained on both albums, and just the overall effectiveness and enjoyability of both of these albums. And I'm going to give like my overall pick, my winner, like the album that if I had to, if I had to take one or the other to a desert island, which one it would be. These bands have a long-lived, interesting rivalry, and so I find the idea of comparing these two albums to be rather compelling. This is Metallica versus Megadeth. And for those as of yet uninitiated into the rivalry, let me catch you up very quickly. In the beginning, there was Metallica, only Metallica. Then Dave Mustaine got fired. Seeking revenge, he formed Megadeth. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area during the rise of both of these bands. And even though both have achieved international success by this point, I still hold them to be very special since they were local in my musical formative years. And so I find the idea of comparing their two latest works to be rather compelling. For your reference, I'm listening on a 7.2.4 Atmos speaker array. I use a Denon X6400H as my processor. I use 11 channels of Emotiva amplification, and I have a blend of definitive technology and Polk speakers. So I'd like to say that I have a modest but a very effective system. I did a lot of research and really tried to make my dollar go a long way while building an actually satisfying system. And I'm using an Apple TV 4K as my streaming device. I have a monthly subscription to Apple. So just trying to give you a sense for my listening situation, again, for reference, and then just to maybe give you ideas about how you could also be streaming Atmos. The Metallica mix simply lacks sufficient material in the immersive sound field to be truly interesting. I had to get up and get my ear near various speakers just to check whether there was anything coming from them or not. And when an immersive format mix fails to be immersive, it just simply has totally failed. Like immersive is in the name of the style. Other than reverb of the material from the front speakers that sounds like it was generated in a trash can, what you're going to get in the immersive surround field for 72 seasons are some delay echoes of the main vocal and Lars crash cymbals. Given that I'm not crazy about the drum sound on this Atmos mix, the latter is actually a bad thing. So the immersive field is used almost entirely ineffectively. There are only a few moments in this album where even like the main vocal echoes popping out into the room are kind of a fun thing. They don't really even do that very much. Speaking of the vocal, this album is mainly one of James' introspection, and I would really like to hear his voice a lot more. Instead, he's contending with drums and guitars entirely too much, and to my ears, to my taste, he is a bit buried here. And that's a mistake given that there's some soul searching on this record. And speaking of drums, I really feel that Lars' drum sound is a bit too crisp here. I got really tired of it after a few tracks, especially since his playing is very boring. He's like all about the single rolls, and I don't know. It just sounds so stock to me and, just not very inventive, not very creative, and not varied. I don't know. It just feels predictable and just sort of monotonous to me. So, for a variety of reasons, I would like Lars' drums pulled down in this mix. and also EQ'd a bit more warmly and just sort of like sitting more in the background. I understand like, the thump of the kick drum, the, boom pop. I don't want to entirely miss the groove of the drums, but they're just a little bit too much in this mix for me. Greg Fiddleman and gang need to better utilize Atmos capabilities for future Metallica Atmos material. Metallica is supposed to be the greatest thrash rock metal band on the planet. They definitely have the resources to do anything they want to do. There's no reason for the Metallica camp to be putting out an ineffective Atmos mix. It's probably just a matter of nobody in their camp really understanding what Atmos can do. So they really need to get with either some proven Atmos mixers, such as Steven Wilson or Bruce Sword, or they need to bring like some sort of a surround consultant onto their team. Like, hey, I live pretty close to Marin, you guys. I'll come, help give some advice about how to like actually create an immersive mix with the immersive technology of Atmos. I'm very happy to do so. I would love to see your next record actually be like the best one of your career. It can be done. Anthrax is putting out amazing albums right now. Metallica can, and then like you guys definitely have the resources to put out the best Atmos mix ever produced. I mean, why not? You guys put out Through the Never, which is an amazing movie. Like you guys can definitely do it. By stark contrast, the Megadeth mix basically kicks unholy ass. It's really good in Atmos. I have a couple of nitpicks about like the style of the mix, but in terms of being immersive, this album announces itself to be an immersive one from the very first moment. And within the first minute, like, I was thoroughly trusting that I was in for a really, really cool immersive experience. The Atmos, the immersive surround field on this album is usually the residence of lead guitar work, including entire guitar solos, are often in your immersive surround field, drawing them away from the rhythm guitars and the drums and just giving them, like space to breathe. And so you can kind of hear the interplay between Dave's rhythms and the leads. And it's a very cool interplay. The immersive surround field also features numerous vocal overdubs like spoken word voiceovers, sound effects like dogs, a la Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd's Animals has nothing on this record. When the dogs started going crazy on this album, my pit bull came into the theater room to make sure that I didn't need some protecting. So, very realistic and very engaging helicopter sounds during Night Stalkers. So, very effective use of the immersive surround field. I felt just quite engaged throughout the album in terms of like how it was mixed. In terms of the content, we'll get to that in a little bit. The drums could be clearer in this mix. I feel like they could be brought up a bit. And I also feel that Dave's vocal is a bit too dominant. It could be brought down a little bit. So it's funny that regarding vocals and drums, I really feel like these two albums could use a swap, where James Hetfield should be brought up and Lars brought down on the Metallica mix. And then, vice versa for the drums and vocal for the Megadeth mix. Although these two stylistic points don't ruin this mix for me, I enjoy this mix sufficiently. I just made it as a mental note that I might try something slightly different with those two elements. So the immersive mix for The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead makes copious use of Atmos capabilities, and it sounds really good, and it generally is mixed very satisfactorily for me. I would only make like a couple of stylistic tweaks. So I really feel that Maddie Hardon should be very, very proud of her work here. And I really am going to recommend that you check out this mix, streaming, for me, Apple Music, maybe for you, Tidal. All right, so on to the music. 72 Seasons, frankly, often bores me, especially Lars' drumming work. It just sounds very unimaginative and not very technical either. Really nothing that feels like, it's on the leading edge of metal or anything like that. I also find a lot of the lead guitar work to be just pointless and boring, and I really would have just cut it if I were their producer. And there is some compelling lead guitar work, and I would leave all of that, but there's just so much that just feels like noodling or just kind of eating up time on tape to me, not engaging. And I think a lot of songs would be stronger without a lot of the lead guitar work that's been supplied here. There are some great riffs on this record, but there's also a lot of stuff that just sounds totally stock, like easy for a beginner to learn during guitar lessons kind of stock. The lyrics reference topics or concepts that rarely are of interest to me. Some of the lyrics are indecipherable and just unrelatable. James Hetfield is mainly introspective on this album, and his introspections just really fail to resonate with me most of the time. And at times, I just am unsure of what the meaning of a song is. Listening to the last track with me, my son leaned over and asked, "Daddy, do you know what this song is about?" And I just had to tell him, I don't know, son. I just don't know. As for 72 Seasons, I really struggle to remember anything from it, even from what I consider to be the strongest track, Lux Eterna. I remember like, a second or two, but even like the best hook on it just doesn't really do so much for me that I feel like I must listen to it ever again, really. Rock is cool and all, and I don't particularly like favor thrash over it, but I really feel like this album just sort of doesn't ultimately achieve what it sets out to do. I don't find it to be a great hard rock album or a great thrash album. The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead is not my musical cup of tea every single second, but there are some very appreciable moments. It is definitely, without a doubt, a legit thrash record from a seminal thrash band. The playing on this record is on point. It is technical, it's aggressive. It sounds to me like it would take some doing to try to learn and achieve. So there's a kind of complexity that is being offered here that really is lacking in the new Metallica effort. And I ultimately find this technicality and this prowess to be quite engaging. My son is into helicopters, including Blackhawks, and he knows that I have ridden on a lot of Blackhawks for my job. So we had a great time listening to Night Stalkers together. It references Blackhawk helicopters during Ice-T's vocal overdub, and I really appreciate the collaborative contribution from Ice-T here. It's a lot of fun, and it was really cool to see his name in the credits, and then like the track didn't disappoint. It's fun, and I really enjoyed listening to it with my son in particular. It's really cool, and I could see us doing that again. Dave is engaging with some current events and just, topics that are relevant to this day and age. And I just found that to be much more compelling than, the kind of meditative self-improvement kind of thing that James is doing with 72 Seasons. Both records are too long. If I were the producer on these records, I would limit these bands to classic LP length, 44 minutes, baby. There's a kind of like built-in quality control when you keep projects, short. Like my favorite Rush record is probably their shortest one, Permanent Waves. I'm not sure it's even 40 minutes. Sometimes less is more, and when bands just kind of put everything that they really feel like onto, like a digital album or just spread it across two or three vinyl LPs, the odds that there's going to be some filler and that it's going to be hard to like keep your attention through a whole album, I think are astronomical. I do enjoy some longer records, but they are really, really, really masterpiece records. To exceed that 44-minute limit and, not have any filler and keep everyone's interest, I think is quite a feat. And I don't think Megadeth or Metallica have pulled that off here. They both simply could have left a few tracks on the cutting room floor or relegated to like a bonus tracks section, and both albums would instantly improve just by shortening them up, including fewer songs. But there are also passages in 72 Seasons that are just like super duper boring, even on like some of like their better tracks. So they would really need, an editor to go through and deliver us like a tight 44 minutes. I think Dave Mustaine's compositions are tight enough that, we would just need to pick like the best 10 or 11. I did a video a while back critiquing 72 Seasons as an album and giving suggestions for how Metallica could like instantly put out a better record next time. So I will select that as like, one of those pop-up links that you can click at the end of this video. Both bands need to put out their immersive audio work in Blu-ray format. Dave, you're already good to go with 3 of your albums. The Atmos mixes for Rust in Peace, Countdown to Extinction, and The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead are all effective. Like maybe make a couple of tweaks to your latest album, like bring the drums up a little bit and your voice down a little bit. But I mean, really seriously, like all 3 are, professional and, satisfying, effective mixes. Just press those already existing Atmos mixes losslessly to Blu-ray, include stereo as well, and put out a standalone Blu-ray and watch the dollars come pouring into your bank account. Like there is a market. There are those out there who love these Atmos mixes streaming and would love the upgrade to a lossless sound. James and Company, you're going to need to remix 72 Seasons to make for a compelling streaming product, and then also to make for a compelling Blu-ray product. The existing Atmos mix of 72 Seasons is a dog. Even if it were put out as like the most affordable standalone Blu-ray ever, I really wouldn't support it. It's just not an immersive mix. It just fails at what it's supposed to do. And both bands need to put out their ultra classic albums, properly mixed in Atmos and on Blu-ray. I'm talking about Peace Cells, So Far So Good So What, Euthanasia, that haven't come out yet from Megadeth. And I'm talking about Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning, Kill 'Em All, and Justice for All, the Black Album, and maybe beyond a little bit. So musically and mix-wise, and in terms of just, the strength of the album, the new Megadeth is my pick, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. So keep on keeping on, Dave. I'm glad to hear you thrashing it up. In my opinion, Megadeth and Anthrax are the strongest current thrash bands. Megadeth, you're putting out decent albums, and Anthrax, you're putting out like the best albums of your career. So I'm just loving that. I think we have Among the Living in Atmos, so I'm going to be listening to some Anthrax in Atmos soon. And Slayer has an Atmos album up streaming as well. So there could be some more, streaming Atmos content related to the big four thrash bands that rose up in my home region. So after I've listened to Anthrax and Slayer in Atmos, that may compel me to develop some more content to share with you. So I hope you found this review interesting and maybe helpful. I really encourage you to check out Megadeth in streaming Atmos. There are 3 really excellent mixes that are available. We've got Rust in Peace, Countdown to Extinction, and the new album, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. I can recommend listening to all 3 from an immersive perspective. And I'm going to encourage you to skip 72 Seasons by Metallica. Like if you really are just, hell bent on checking out the music, then you can do so, via mono, like an Alexa over in the corner of your room, or headphones. There's no particular reason to check out this Atmos mix. It fails to be immersive, bottom line. So The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead by Megadeth is my pick. It is the winner. Megadeth has prevailed over Metallica. So, I hope that makes you super happy, Dave. So, thanks for, hiring, actually effective Atmos mixing engineers. I really appreciate it. Please put out your material on Blu-ray. And for everyone, I really appreciate you watching. If you appreciate what I do, don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you haven't, ring the notification bell if you haven't. Please feel free to comment. Tell everyone what your pick is of these two albums and whether you agree or disagree with me and just what your overall perspective is. I love reading your perspectives when you agree with me and when you don't. And then please, don't forget to share these videos if it's ever, appropriate in your various groups online. And I really appreciate all of your support and thank you for watching and happy listening. I hope you have a good time. And above all else, I hope you all are managing to live life in surround.